Welcome everyone. Today, we're delving into the world of NIO stock. We'll analyze its current status and delve into critical insights for the coming months. Despite possible short-term fluctuations, NIO's historical trends point to exciting potential as we approach year-end. Join us as we uncover the factors shaping NIO's future. What's going on with NIO stock and talk about something very important for the next upcoming months. Because during the upcoming months, towards the end of the year, you will see that NIO often performs very well at this time. So I'm going to break down why on earth. It's very possible that as long as there isn't anything too crazy on the news from a macroeconomic standpoint, there's a high probability that even if NIO is a little weak for this month of September, as we approach the end of this year going into the next few months, NIO was primed for a massive short squeeze, and these drops could be very good buying opportunities in my opinion. So I'm going to talk about why underneath that is some very big things to consider and why I'm very excited for what's about to come to NIO in my opinion. But when I start talking about things related to NIO stock and some important updates, let's first understand what's going on with NIO stock and provide some very crucial updates. As of now, when I'm discussing its update, NIO is at approximately $10 per share. But I want to break down something very important. When you look at the weekly time frame of NIO, the weekly is still looking kind of weak for NIO. And if this thing does continue to downtrend, I am not worried whatsoever. And here's the reason why. When you go and zoom out of the charts, you notice something interesting about NIO. Every time this thing has these major sell-offs for many weeks, we eventually get a nice pop to the upside. This keeps on happening. So for a trader, this could be very good for volatility. But on top of this, I just want to remind everyone that when it comes to the way NIO moves, the long term of this company is still very bright, and I think there's a lot of potential for some strong deliveries as we approach the end of the year, and that could help the share price big time. So why don't you just break this down for everyone and talk about something very important now? Let's talk about their delivery numbers. Now, even though there are negative macroeconomic effects involving China, even though in China we're seeing exports slowing down and some negative pieces of news, it is not the end of the world for NIO in my opinion. These are external things that are outside of NIO's control, and I think that fundamentals will eventually help the company because the market is going to help NIO drag itself up. And also NIO has some strong catalysts coming in my opinion. So when you look at their numbers, okay, if you look at their deliveries, I just wanted to mention that towards the last couple of months that we just had, NIO has reported some very strong numbers, and I believe that this trend may continue as time goes on. So we have their deliveries right here, right? You will be able to see their month-long supply, and their last two supplies were very strong. And when the static emerged, you guys observed some temporary bounces. But there's something else that's very important and worth noting, and that is the fact that from a seasonality basis, the ends of the year tend to be some of the strongest periods for NIO, not just in terms of deliveries, but also in terms of their price performances. And I'm going to talk to you about some past data and also tell you how the numbers look. So there are their deliveries, and you guys will notice a very interesting trend. Now, let's focus on the orange bars. We'll start with the orange ones. Okay, for 2021, we will look at the orange one there. They did like 7,000 deliveries back in January 2021. And if you look, they were basically doing between 5,000 to about 7,000 deliveries during that period. But then in September, they saw a slight increase, a bit of a drop in October, and then in November and December, they will see very strong numbers for their time, surpassing all-time highs for 2021 and before that period. So during that time, they set the highest numbers for November and December 2021, and that was very strong. Let's talk about the green bars now. I'm going to talk about the green ones over there. What happened in 2022? January had decent numbers. February was a little weak because of the Lunar New Year. You know, March was a bit better, and April was a bit weak due to the lockdown. So we saw some slight improvements in May and June. Then they had pretty decent months, especially for August and September, but they saw a bit of a slowdown in October. These are the same things I could expect for the next month. But here's the thing. November came, NIO crushed it. December came, they absolutely killed it. So once again, the same things happened towards the very end of this year. Slight slowdown in October for their numbers. September tends to be relatively strong too, but October tends to be a little slower. But November and December tend to be very, very strong for them. Let's talk about the current chart now. I know this chart doesn't show August. I couldn't find the chart that includes August, but basically, for the month of August, we saw 19,000 deliveries. Again, in September, we might see something very similar. As long as the trend remains in the range of 19,000 to 20,000 deliveries, we might witness a slight decline in October. But then, as we move into November and December, things tend to get much, much stronger. I wouldn't be surprised if they achieve around 25,000 to 30,000 deliveries during that time frame. Regardless of whether there are any lockdowns or potential lockdowns in play, regardless of what anyone might be saying, there are some talks about that. I know I heard people saying that for the end of the year, but also despite any economic contractions, I think there is potential for NIO to give us some very strong numbers for November and December. If you only look at historical trends and on top of that, observe this. If you look at SPI or any other stock, November tends to be one of the strongest months of the year. We often see SPI in the green 80% of the time in November. We tend to get that Santa rally or something very nice like that. Now for NIO, I want you guys to go and see something. Historically, NIO tends to be a little weak in February. March tends to be a weak month for it. April is a bit better. May is okay. June tends to be a bit weak. July is fine. And August is somewhat weak. September is good. Historically a pretty good month for them. But this time, with the macroeconomic factors, they are still slowing down, partly due to their earnings, because these are the same things we were expecting. October tends to be a little bit weak because their deliveries tend to not be the best. But check out November, they're very strong. November. December tends to be strong. January tends to be extremely strong for them historically. So we are approaching the 3 strongest months of NIO's year, November through January, that tends to be the strongest period for them. And there's a chance that we will see a big squeeze for the company. Now, to be honest with everyone, okay, I'm just being honest with you all. There could be a bit of weakness in NIO for the short term, right? If you go and see how the market is moving. But I'm trying to talk about this gap that's unfilled on NIO. Let me just talk about the chart, and you can see that this 10.68 area could potentially be filled. First, NIO could attempt to fill this gap before it falls further. But on the daily chart, NIO still appears somewhat weak, still on a slight downtrend. However, I'm not at all concerned because one thing worth mentioning is that even if NIO was forming something like a head and shoulders pattern, if we experience a small bounce after a recent period of selling, we might see a quick bounce after a few days. But even if we continue to decline, it's okay because, as I mentioned earlier, every time NIO drops to around $7 or levels like $8 or $9, every time we reach this range, it eventually makes its way back up. Back in the chart, this thing was in the 7. What to do it? It bounced all the way back up to like 14. It doubled in value within a month right from November to December. We saw this very, very nice pump then on top of that. Right here, NIO was at about $8. We got to pump all the way back up to 10. It did come a little bit lower into the 7. Stayed there for a few months because of some bad news, but then after that, from $7 from the middle of June, it went all the way up to 16 by August, within just a couple of months. Now it's going back down. Let's just say it does drop back down to 7. What do you think is going to happen? Is it going to crash forever? Just be honest with me, think about the trends. Think about how strong deliveries are likely going to be as time goes on. Think about the months of November and December. Historically, think about the fact that November, December, and January tend to be the strongest months of the year for NIO. And then on top of all of that, if you look at the chart, yes, it may seem a bit weak. Yes, it could fall. But if you look at this 10.6 area, there's an unfilled gap here. If you look around 11.5, there's another unfilled gap. And if you look at this level here, we have yet another unfilled gap that has essentially formed. If you go and zoom in on the chart, you can see it a bit better. This gap remains unfilled around 12.73. There's a big unfilled gap at 14.8, and at least for the medium term, for the next few months, I can see NIO potentially returning to the 14/15 range. So if you're buying at $10 and it keeps dropping, consider dollar cost averaging. Maybe lower your average by buying at lower levels. But if you're patient and wait for a few months, you could potentially see a significant return on your shares or any leaps if you choose to buy them. Remember, this is not financial advice, but I wanted to highlight that this presents a significant opportunity for those who wanted to buy NIO at these low prices. People were telling me they wanted NIO to go back to $7 from this thing was pumping to 16 because they wished they bought the dips. Well, what's happening now? It's like when NIO starts dropping, people start panicking, they start complaining and crying. But this is just another opportunity, another big opportunity to buy the dips now. For the really long term, for the next upcoming years. I just want to say this. You can see the chart, and I don't know what happened. Friends, I apologize for that. I don't know what happened there. But let's talk about the chart, and there are other important things to discuss. Up here, we have 20 unfilled gaps. I saw another one. There's another unfilled gap here. I don't know if this one has completely filled or not. I think it's almost filled, but maybe there are more gaps in the 40, which I'm not seeing right now. I'll be able to see it with my eyes very soon. But you know, often there are unfilled gaps. There are 60 unfilled gaps up here, as you can see. So friends, I want to make the point that these gaps could be filled in the future. It may take a while, but eventually they're going to make their way back up. Now, if you at the market, if we look at NIO as looking at the very least for the shorter term, there could be some downside. Perhaps we can help fill the gap at 10.6 a little. Then we might start dropping lower. Yes, that could happen, right? You know, September and October, they're not typically the strongest months. But as we approach the end of the year, I am quite confident that when the market rises, which is highly likely, we will see more upside for NIO. If you look at SPY on the monthly chart, recognize this. All right, on the monthly SPY chart, there's a big cup and handle formation. Yes, it's like a cup. Now, reforming the handle, it might drop a bit. It could drop a bit more for September. Yes, the market could pull down lower. Yes, but this is another buying opportunity because it's just a big cup and handle. It will take some time to push up in the end. That's what this is suggesting. And we are also due for a significant pullback. If you look at the charts, we've had several consecutive green months. So a small pullback would be normal before a bigger push to the upside. We can still talk about the market remaining very stable today. And I believe that by November, December, we'll see very, very bullish price action. I think that's going to happen. It will propel NIO upward, and I think NIO will experience significant growth during that time frame. If you look at the monthly chart, we are approaching a bullish cross very close to it. It might take another month or two to fully develop, but ultimately, I believe NIO will undergo a substantial reversal. I am still leaning in that direction. So I hope this video was clear. I hope it's optimistic for those who are feeling anxious and fearful. Yes, there could be downsides in the future. Yes, and it's still a possibility for the months of September and October. Yes, but I am still bullish for the long term, for many different reasons, from NIO's fundamentals to the improvements being made to the company. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stock predictions and market insights. Remember to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Happy investing and see you in the next video.